Hi, this is Larry Hama, and you're listening to the LONGBOX CRUSADE. What's in your long box?
The LONGBOX CRUSADE presents
G.I. Joe Chronicles.
Don't they realize they're dealing with Destro?
When I'm through, Scud Bucket, they're gonna scrape you off the walls with a squeegee.
Now stop sputtering like a wet toaster and get busy!
Welcome to G.I. Joe Chronicles. I'm one of your commanders, Pat Sampson, codename DJ Kristatos. And joining me, as always, is my battle buddy in this operation, Jarrod Albrecht, codename Death Probe.
It's a prescription for danger.
I just woke up. At ease, Kristatos.
Oh, I've been at ease all along, Jarrod. And I see you have too. Nice.
Yeah, I was asleep.
You were just telling us about your water thing. So were you sleeping on Destro's sub?
Mm-hmm. Destro's sub.
Underwater lights?
Underwater lights is very, very relaxing. But I made it back here to Fort Longbox. And to all the green shirts tuning in for this podcast, I want to welcome you back to Fort Longbox. We appreciate you tuning in to talk some more G.I. Joe comics with us. On this episode, we're going to continue chronicling our way through G.I. Joe America's Elite. Next episode, we will return to our coverage of G.I. Joe Special Missions by Marvel. But for this one, we're doing America's Elite from 2005. Now, folks, you're going to want to make sure you tune in all the way to the end of the show, because after we get through the meat and potatoes of the show today, we have a little special thing for you.
Yes.
Because we are awesome and classy and awesome. We get the big guests around here, Pat. We get the big guests.
But, Jarrod, why do we get the big guests?
Awesome and classy.
Yes.
Okay. No, this gentleman was kind enough to take time out of his busy schedule to talk to us. We are going to have our interview with the writer of this story arc of G.I. Joe America's Elite. Mr. Joe Casey is going to stop by at the end of the show, and we're going to pepper him with some questions that hopefully you've wanted answers to. And he's going to let us know all about what it was like writing on Joe back here in, what was this, 2005, I think that. So get excited about that. That will be after we get to the meat and potatoes of the show. Look forward to that interview. On this episode of G.I. Joe Chronicles, DJ Kristatos and I are going to rotate in a special ops guest on the show. For this episode, our special ops guest is Jasn Lady, Crusaders Club member and codename Ladybug. Welcome to Fort Longbox, Ladybug.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Yo, Joe.
Yo, Joe, indeed. Now is the part where we debrief our new recruit. So it's time for Ladybug here to tell us his origin story with G.I. Joe. And then you have to do the most difficult task of all, which is tell us your three favorite characters, be they Joes or Cobras.
So my origin story with G.I. Joe, I feel like in the 1980s when I grew up, you were either a G.I. Joe kid, a Star Wars kid, or a He-Man kid, or maybe a Transformers kid. I was a Star Wars kid, just through and through. And so G.I. Joe was kind of on the periphery for me for a lot of my childhood. The other kids had those toys. I was always a kid with all the Star Wars stuff. I had friends that had all the G.I. Joe toys. When I was really young, there were some older kids in the neighborhood who had G.I. Joe comics. And so I never collected those, but I'd always borrow theirs and read theirs. And I thought they were so cool. And some of those mid-'80s G.I. Joe comics are just so great. And they really stuck with me, even though I didn't actually own them and didn't actually, collect them or have them for myself. Fast forward many years, I was in middle school. My sister went to prom with a guy who got to know me a little bit because I was a little brother of his friend. And he brought over a long box of all G.I. Joe comics. And I remember, I think I was in 8th grade. And I just sat there and just ripped through all of them and loved it. And later in life, found the collected editions of the comics that they've put out, got those out of the library and kind of got caught up to some extent on it. So always been kind of interested, just never was all in, never, my mom and dad were kind of like, there's only so much money to go around, kid. So you got to pick something here. It's like, I'll pick Star Wars.
Yeah, the biggest overlap as far as toys goes, I really feel like, is Joe hit sort of Return of the Jedi. Like Joe hit in 82 and Return of the Jedi hit in 83. So it's
Yeah. I was a little behind the times with the Star Wars stuff. Yeah, I felt like other kids had kind of moved on to other stuff, and I was still.
Yes, I'm gonna stick it out. Dang it!
No,
you just wait.
cool.
They're gonna make 6 more movies. You wait and see.
You just wait.
And a year now, they're coming out. Yeah.
6 more movies, and then 3 of them will be decent.
In the meantime, Lucas makes Willow and makes other things. It doesn't make Star Wars.
We don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I kind of do, but I'm not going to.
I'm a Willow fan. I will admit that. I am a Willow fan.
A Willow fan?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, Willow's the
Great
greatest.
movie.
I didn't want to go down the subsequent Star Wars movie.
Yeah. That's another podcast.
That's another podcast for another network. It's not even for us.
I agree. Yeah.
But what about your 3? After reading all those comics, you got to have 3 favorite characters.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's probably very stereotypical to say this, but Snake Eyes is one of my 3 favorite characters. I just think he's awesome. I was awestruck by him when I first discovered him in those early days reading G.I. Joe comics. The silent issue stuck with me all these years. Thought he was the coolest. Kind of an overload of cool traits, but still really cool. Wears all black, quiet, you never see what his face looks like. Ninja sword, Uzi, pet wolf, boyfriend of Scarlet. There's just insane amount of things. Yeah, there's a lot going for him. Other than Snake Eyes, though, which, like I said, seems a little stereotypical. I think everybody probably mentions him as a favorite.
Nothing wrong with it.
Duke is one of my other favorite Joes. And reason being, Duke was the first sergeant. And my dad was in the Army. My dad was a non-commissioned officer. Very proud of that. He rose to the rank of sergeant major, but at one point he was a first sergeant. And that was his favorite job while he was in the Army. He always said that. So Duke has a special connection because I'm kind of like, oh, okay, I get what Duke's about and like what Duke does. And Duke kind of represents all those other people in the Joe team, like Beachhead and Stalker. There were other senior NCOs in the team, too. They may just not have been as high up as Duke. And then my 3rd favorite character, got to say Roadblock. I think Roadblock is great. I like how he's like this big, strong guy who can heft a 50 caliber machine gun, but he also is a chef. He has like this really refined kind of like hobby, kind of a side hustle that he does on the side. But he is the guy that will just tear stuff up in combat, just blow everybody away. And if he runs out of ammo, he's just going to beat the crap out of you. I just really have always dug Roadblock. So those are my 3.
I like it, and I respect it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
DJ Kristatos?
Yes.
Intelligence report, go.
Well, Jarrod, I'm glad you asked. For this mission, we will be covering G.I. Joe America's Elite number 4. Publisher was Devil's Due. Cover date of October 2005. Writer was Joe Casey. Penciler is Stefano Caselli. Inker is Stefano Caselli. Colorist is Kendrick Lim. Letters go to Steve Seeley. And cover art is R. Black. And speaking about the cover art, let's go ahead and go back to Death Probe. Please take us through that cover description.
Can do.
Take cover!
Issue 4's cover features Scarlet. She's in a crouched pose with her crossbow as she's blowing on a pair of dice in her palm. The dice, of course, are both rolled to the 1 position, making the roll a Snake Eyes. That's about it. Back to you, Pat.
All right, Jarrod, thank you for that. That is really about it because she is just all over that cover page. And what else do you need? You don't need anything else around on this one. Let's go ahead and find out what we all thought about the cover, and we'll start with our guest, Ladybug. Go ahead and give us your thoughts on the cover.
Sure. So I never read this comic before, so, you would forgive me if I thought this was a Scarlet-centric story, because, like you say, she's all over the cover.
Spoiler alert, I don't think she appears in the issue at all.
Yeah, hate to break it to you. She's mentioned. There's a lot of where's Scarlet at? What happened to Scarlet? But
she's on the cover.
Yeah. The era of comics where the cover has nothing to do with the story at all. It's just a poster, basically. But it does its job in that it is a good image of Scarlet. I will hand that to them, even though it has nothing to do with the story. I think it's a good picture of her. It's very colorful. I like the kind of updating of her like orange and gray outfit that she's always worn. It's kind of like a more modern version of that. She's got her signature weapon, her crossbow. Sometimes that gets forgotten about. I like that. I think it's kind of cool. She's got Snake Eyes dice in her hand. I think that's a neat touch. I don't know if this kind of pose is really Scarlet, though. She kind of seems a little flirty, and I'm like, she's kind of a tough as nails, all business, kind of person. I'm not sure this captures her personality, really. Not that she doesn't have a tender side. She definitely does, but that part kind of bothers me. I'm like, it's not really a Scarlet image. I would see her more like, with her crossbow, like pointed at the camera or something like that, ready to blow someone away. But like I said, it is a well-done picture of her overall. Just I'm not so sure about the pose, and I'm not sure about why on this comic it's on there. But, the artist did a nice job.
All right. Thank you for your thoughts on the cover. Let's go ahead and see what Jarrod thought.
Largely agree with the Ladybug there on all his points. I did a little digging, and apparently this R. Black had done some posters for musical acts, and I just get the feeling that it's one of those things where he probably crossed paths with Blaylock or someone from Devil's Due at a con, and they're like, hey, you want to do a cover? And he was like, yeah, and he did, because he's not a recurring cover artist. It's kind of a one and done. I don't think he's going to be back. It's like, okay, well, it's cool and different, but all the Caselli covers we've had up until now do link to the book. This one doesn't. I agree with Jasn Lady. I mean, I probably cut the pose a little more slack because at least it's something different from what we would get in a regular, we get her in a playful moment, which is fun, but it is not so in line with her character. It's almost like Snake Eyes took this picture while they were having, alone time at the cabin. They thought it would be fun, a little photo shoot for Scarlet. And
what do you think of this for our Christmas?
Yeah, Christmas cards.
Not the Christmas card. Isn't this clever?
I will say that as far as the cover dress goes, I do like the red banner across the top. I didn't mention it in the cover description, but the red banner kind of makes it fun in that it's Scarlet. But yeah, it's unique and fun, but so I'm not mad at it, but it is what it is. What do you think, that?
I think you're right on the headdress on this thing, the banner. I like it because it reminds me of the old Marvel a little bit. It's got that G.I. Joe, or that everybody knows, the G.I. Joe name with the red, white, and blue going across it, stripes. And that kind of takes me back to that old day of that. With Scarlet, though, as Jason said, I do like her newer outfit. So I think that's really cool. This is the age of big, thick boots. Her boots on there are super thick, and everybody's is really, when you look at these issues, it's like, you got really big, thick shoes. It's like, how are you running in these things? They got to weigh you down. It's like everybody's wearing Doc Martens of some sort, and it's like, are they still toed? They probably still toed, they have to be, just because of the stuff they're doing. At least I would want it to be. I wouldn't want to be.
If it makes you feel any better, I had pretty thick boots when I was in Iraq too.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't have any fur though.
No boots with the fur.
With the fur.
Looking at her. She hit the floor, blew the dice. Hit the floor, blew the dice.
Carly got low.
She got snake eyes.
But you guys don't pay for these podcasts. Just want to remind you.
But yeah. I think it's well done. Pretty cool looking. Definitely nothing to do with the story at all.
Again, she doesn't even appear in the comic.
That's what kills me. And there's some moments in the story that would have been cool to be on the cover, right?
Yeah.
There's some really cool action sequences. So we'll get to those. But I'm like, you could have put one of those on the cover.
Again, I really think they probably linked up and with this dude at a convention, and he was like, I'll do a cover. And they were like, cool. And then that's what happened. This has that feel to it all over.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite character? You can draw anyone you want. Oh, I love Scarlet.
Let's go.
What issue will we put this cover on? That one. Throw a dart. Where's the dart land? Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and find out how we would rate this cover, as we do here, on a scale of 1 to 10 flag points. 1 meaning you didn't like it at all, and 10 meaning it's perfect and you should make this a Christmas postcard poster for you and your. So, Jarrod, what's your thoughts? 1 to 10 flag points on this.
Oh, man, making me go first. I'm not the biggest on it. I like it because it's different, but it still kind of killed the vibe of what was going on here in America's Elite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's fine. I mean, it's good drawing. I'll say it's a 5.
Ooh,
Right in the middle. Right in the middle.
Okay.
It's average to me. It's like, okay, that's neat. Now back to your regular scheduled covers. I'm not hating on the guy, the artist or anything. It just, I don't know. I'm 5 in it.
Okay. All right. Jason, will you be higher or lower?
A little higher. I'd give it a 6. What bumps it down to a 6 to me is that just everything we've been talking about, which is she's not in the story. She's mentioned in the story. But, I don't take it any lower because I think it is a well done portrait of Scarlet. It looks good. It just has nothing to do with the comic. So there's a cover story mismatch, and that takes it down to a 6 for me.
All right. Well, I am stuck in between choosing a 6 or a 7 on this one. But I mean, the artwork it's very well, but I'll stay at a 6 just because I think, there could be something a little bit more done with this, or just having it to do something to do with what's actually happening in the comic. To me, this would be like one of the variants, right? If you're going to do a variant, this should be the variant.
Yeah, this would make a lot more sense as a variant. Yes.
Yeah, I would do that and consider that. But I think
maybe they're trying to give Caselli a break. He was doing covers and interiors and all that. Maybe they were like, this will give him a little breather.
That's true.
Yeah. I wondered it was an alternate cover too. I was looking into that. Like, are there other covers out there?
Yeah.
Like, is the real cover out there somewhere? No,
this is it.
And this is weird because this is the age of a lot of alternate Joe covers. And I was surprised too. I was like, this is the one,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, here it is. Again, I'm not hating on the art or anything. It's just kind of a sore thumb.
Yeah.
If you're flipping through those first America's Elite issues, it's like,
whoa.
Oh, hey.
Scarlet solo story. Cool. No, that's not what this is.
It's like I want at least the cover to remind me of what's the story about in this issue.
And forevermore, this one will remind you of what is not. When you see this cover, you're going to be like, no Scarlet.
Yeah, no Scarlet in that one.
We all miss her. Yes. So we'll put her on the cover.
All right. Well, now that we've got that all squared away of the cover, let's go back to Death Probe for the story synopsis in our mission brief.
Can do, Pat. The time has come to stop the mysterious villain that has been using satellite systems to destroy American cities. The Joe team is still unaware that their old foe, Vance Wingfield, is behind it all, and he's about to rain down some more satellites on New York City and Washington, D.C. But they are prepared to intercept Wingfield's next move. Firewall has taken control of the powerful antenna array in New Mexico, and she's in a space-based tug of war with Wingfield trying to save those two cities. Of course, Wingfield has the support of Destro's tech and Destro's new automated Iron Grenadiers. So a whole platoon of the robotic warriors arrive to attempt to destroy the New Mexico facility. Luckily, even though they are stretched thin, Stalker, Flint, Shipwreck, Roadblock, and Storm Shadow are there to battle the androids, giving Firewall enough time to not only win the space-based battle, but get a lock on Wingfield's position. Questions remain. Will the Joes find Wingfield? And furthermore, find his backer, Destro? And where are Scarlet and Snake Eyes? And what is Duke up to on the jungle rivers of South America?
Now, back to G.I. Joe.
All right, guys, it's time to get into the highs and lows and what does of this issue. Round one, we start with Jasn Lady, the Ladybug himself. You going to lead us off with a high, a low, or a what the?
I will say that we do know where Scarlet is. She's on the cover of the comic.
Yeah, she's on the cover. We found her.
Check, we got that one.
Over there. Yep. Yeah. But in all seriousness, though, as far as the highs and lows of this comics, this is not a series I've ever read. This is a newer G.I. Joe series for me, and not a comic I've ever read. So I was kind of coming in the very middle. I didn't know who Vance Wingfield was. I was very much coming in the middle of a story here and playing catch up. But despite that, I by and large enjoyed this comic. I go to G.I. Joe comics for a couple different things. One of them is you kind of want that tense military adventure story happening. And I felt like that was happening in this. I liked the kind of double battle that was happening in this story where, You had Firewall struggling to block that signal that was going to bring the satellites down on the cities. And at the same time, you had this air and ground battle happening outside that facility. They're trying to hold off Destro's forces to give her time to do that. I thought that juxtaposition and those two battles going on was really tense. I thought that was pretty cool. I like the use of Firewall. She's not a character I was familiar with. There's a bio on her at the end of the comic. I was really glad because it filled me in on who she is. And there aren't enough female Joes. And, there's only like 4 that I knew of until now. So really glad to see the use of that character and how crucial she was to them winning the day. A couple standout scenes to me that I thought were great. One of them was Flint, his helicopter getting shot down, parachuting out of the helicopter, yelling, "Is that all you've got?" And while he's descending to the ground, he is shooting at the bad guys. I thought that was awesome. I could see that happening in a movie. I thought that was great. And then similarly, Storm Shadow has to bail out of the vehicle that he's in. He's parachuting to the ground in mid-descent, slices a robot in half with his sword. That was so cool. I was like, yeah, I'm here for this stuff. Something I thought was funny was Destro deploys these robots. They're robots made by his Mars corporation. He intends to sell these. And so he's having a video footage taken of the battle and his robot's performance in the battle. And he's like, this footage will make a great sales tool to sell my robots.
Ever the businessman.
Yes, I love that. Like, it shows kind of amoral he is, right? There's this fight going on, and all he cares about is, the profit that he'll get from it. And I like, too, at one point in the story, after all these years, Destro still loves the Baroness. That was always a thread through the old series. I'm like, it's still going on. I love it. It warms my heart that he's still pining for her. That was what I had as far as highs. Now, in terms of lows,
we should probably pause. We should probably
yeah.
Okay.
Whoa.
Because we do a thing where you do a high or a low or what the, you're going full speed pad on me.
Sorry.
That's all right. All right. With those highs out of the way, let's let Pat weigh in on, I know he did what you do, Pat. He took a bunch there. So I don't know how you're feeling inside.
Yeah, I'm hurt. I feel like I got slashed. Like I was the one, like Jason was Flint jumping out of the helicopter, and he was just shooting it right at me.
All your
my heart.
eyes.
Yeah, come on, I'm going to take them all. I'm like, no, it was good. I mean, it's great to see how excited Jason is.
Yes, he's got that enthusiasm.
Yeah, because, just coming into this issue and the things that he wasn't mentioning, Wingfield, there's a callback to that. I don't know if you dug into that a little bit more, Jason, at all, where it's from.
No, I didn't.
Okay. We can either spoil it for you or you can find out as you listen to the podcast, which normally people should do. Okay. So Wingfield is a callback to an earlier number 4 or
I think
5?
it's issue 4
of the Marvel run, where he was
like a way callback.
Yeah, it's a huge way callback that once that was figured out, we're like, oh yeah, this is the guy who was trying to get his own recruitment triangle scheme,
like militia type of deal.
Yeah, in America.
Okay. I don't remember that. All right, I gotta go back.
He was like a one and done.
Yeah.
He was doing a militia thing. This was back in 82 in issue 4. We were really excited when they picked that up because, wow, someone did their homework.
What a callback!
Kudos to them for pulling him out. Yeah, like that, delving into the history. Yeah,
it was very cool to see that. As far as Firewall goes, she was part of the newer Joe team from the first Devil's Due that came out. It's cool to see, like you said, her coming back and coming to help out too, since they kind of disbanded everybody and we're kind of on a leaner team where we'll grab a Joe when we need a Joe and we'll pull him into the fight here with them. So I like that kind of concept that's going on right now. It kind of helps, I think, kind of keep all the characters on the playing field, or at least that's in the toy box right now. You don't have them all scattered out everywhere. Mm-hmm. You just have a few that you're playing with. And then you got Destro, Duke, and Scarlet, off to the side when you're ready on their secret missions that are going on. So I'm interested really to see where Duke is who's he going after? That's what I don't know.
Yeah, what the heck is he doing?
Yeah,
I don't get it. Yeah,
I don't get it either. And they've been teasing this the last 2 issues. And it's like, well, is he going after? He definitely ain't going after Destro because he ain't in the jungle somewhere. Is he going after Cobra Commander or somebody, Serpentor? I don't know. So I'm really interested in that.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah. And with Snake Eyes and Scarlet, I know from the previous issue, there were kind of some things going on. So they were kind of off and doing their own little thing too. So very cool stuff to see. Again, Jason's excitement really had me going like, oh yeah, he's in that part and that part.
Well, that's all right. I'll just do a quick high, and then I got a question for Jason, and then we'll do our second round. My quick high is going to be, and I kind of a low-hanging fruit, but Caselli is just, this artwork is great. His panel artwork, his facial expressions are incredibly good. I don't know if it was his idea or Hasbro or Joe Casey or whose idea it was to sort of, they did a mixture of some of the more modern vehicles, like Stalker was rolling around in like one of the more 2000s era G.I. Joe vehicles, but Storm Shadow was rocking the Skyhawk. Yeah, the OG Skyhawk.
I recognized it. I couldn't remember the name of it.
I always like that vehicle.
I remember that toy. Yeah.
And Flint was rocking one of the more modern age stuff. So they kind of mixed some of the new stuff and the old stuff, which I thought was neat. But kudos to the artwork and the fun blend of old Joe stuff and new Joe stuff. My question, just from sort of a comic book creator point of view for Ladybug, is the issue starts with a bit of on the inside front cover, a bit of a recap. Did you use that and did it help you, or did you just jump right into the story proper? Like, did them having that recap thing, was that a benefit to you, or is that something you didn't even notice it? Like, I'm just wondering, like, how beneficial was it to you?
I think in this case, I did read it because I was like, I'm coming into this cold. I have no idea what's going on. There's so many comics though where I do blow past that because I'm like, I already know what's happening.
Right.
You know, or I don't need that. I can it's referencing stories that are done sometimes, and I'm like, I don't need to know that. You know, It was helpful though.
Okay, so good to know that it was, they did it in such a way that it was noticeable and it was useful to you as a guy jumping in, like you said, midstream. So that, just wondering. Yeah. All right, with that out of the way, Jason, it is back to you, sir, for the second and final round. So what do you got left in the tank?
Well, let's see. I went through all my highs in one fell swoop, so I guess I'll move on to my lows.
It's all right. The enthusiasm gets a lot of people.
It's awesome to read G.I. Joe comics after all this time.
It's okay.
You guys are giving me an opportunity. I know that you complimented the art, Jarrod. I found it a little cartoony, a little kind of jarring for G.I. Joe. I didn't think it was bad art by any means. I was like, I don't know if it's like the best fit with a G.I. Joe, but that also could just be my biases going back to the Marvel series. And, they had folks like Mike Zeck and artists like that on it who had a little more of a realistic look to things. But I didn't think that their art was bad by any means. Don't get me wrong. Something I missed from this G.I. Joe story that I always liked about older G.I. Joe stories was Larry Hama was a Vietnam veteran, the writer of the original G.I. Joe. And so he incorporated all this like military like tactics and gadgets and weapons. And some of it was, futuristic, sci-fi kind of stuff. But some of it was also real life stuff. And he put a lot of real lived in experience into it. And you don't have that in this comic at all. You can kind of tell that, it's a different writer and, it's a different flavor. And that's okay. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But I was kind of missing that. For me, that's a low. I kind of missed that stuff. I thought the story was a little bit light on the lighter side, but that's comics from the 2000s onward, right? They're all like that, where they're decompressed and there isn't a whole lot in there and they're writing for the trade.
I will say, since this is your first jump in here, sort of mid-story arc, that this one in particular, I think Pat would agree with me too, is a bit less dense. It's a lot of battle.
I was waiting to say that.
Mexico. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the last few issues have been building to this kind of confrontation, and now it's like action time. It's
just all out
this
fighting.
One's definitely the action beat issue of this story.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of the climax. No, that makes sense. And only one other low, and that was, I'm used to Wild Bill flying the helicopter. Why is Flint flying the helicopter? Where's Wild Bill? So that was my only other thing. But overall, I did enjoy this. Just only 2 or 3 lows there.
And my defense attorney for that will be that Flint is a warrant officer, and I don't remember if it's on his card or not, but most warrant officers in the Army are pilots.
Yeah.
He may not be, I'm not sure, but when I saw him flying around like that, I went, oh, they kind of used the whole warrant officer thing. That's neat, but
I thought of that too. Yeah.
Wild Bill, of course you would, because you were a military kid like me, but Wild Bill should be in the helicopter. He really should be in the helicopter.
Always Wild Bill. Or at least lift ticket. Get lift ticket in there, you know?
I'm assuming with what's going on with Flint that, nobody didn't want to tell him, no, you can't fly today.
Yeah, he's been grumpy.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Wild Bill's on the team right now. Remember, because they were forced to trim to 12 members or...
That's true, yeah.
Or whatever. Or maybe less.
They're on a little less of a crew, so...
I think it's everybody we saw, plus Snake Eyes, Scarlet, and Duke. So
that's what I figured.
Yeah.
I just miss Bill. I miss him.
He should be in the chopper.
Yeah.
Get to the chopper, Bill.
The chopper, Bill.
Bill, get to the chopper.
All right, Pat. Did Ladybug leave you anything, or
let me just look through you. There's a few crumbs in here that I could probably pick up. And
I got that many lows. Come on.
No, I will though. I will talk about just again with Joe Casey, his detail with the characters, just continuing on that beat of Flint and his anger that's inside him for Jason. He lost Lady J, his wife.
Oh,
so. Yeah, at the end of the story arc before this one, she was straight up killed by...
That stinks.
The Red Shadows, I do believe.
Yeah, that was in the series before, towards the right at the end. And so he's been a little angry. And that's why when you kind of read him and what he's saying, I read it with the anger in his voice because that guy is pissed.
That makes sense. I was kind of wondering about that because I was like, Flint was usually a pretty... even
pretty level-headed guy.
Yeah, he's been very
calm leader. Yeah,
he's had it rough. And Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, but did Breaker die in the assault on Cobra Island? And is that why we have Firefly? Is he dead? Because I think he might be.
Breaker, the
comms guy.
Oh,
you mean Firewall?
No.
Yes, I think that's why we have Firewall.
I don't. You know what? I can't remember
if he died on the assault. Cobra Island too. Spoiler alert! I'm almost positive he dies in this run somewhere, but I can't remember if he's dead.
I can't remember if they did or not, or just that he was, getting older or whatever, and
maybe they just phased him out. I can't remember.
Yeah. Well,
hey, you know who will remember? G.I. Gary, Jim the Joe Junkie, Scotty Cameron.
Yep.
Somebody, one of those guys is going to straight. Serpy Matt. Some of those guys.
Yeah. Somebody, one of you guys out there, go ahead and put it in the comments.
We don't do the research. You guys do the research. 707-532-5269, 707-532-LBOX.
Let us know.
There's always Dial Tone also. Dial Tone was a
well, he's my guy. Mainframe, yep. See, there's a lot of those tech guys, but now you have the internet, and so that's why you need a, codename Firewall.
Yeah, Firewall's sort of the more modern
techie person.
That's
Dial Tone is kind of obsolete. His code name is kind of obsolete now. Can't change that name. No one knows what that means anymore. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I guess he's right. When was the last time you actually heard it?
And Breaker, Breaker. That's old. See, Breaker.
Breaker.
Yeah, Breaker. Yeah, it's even more obsolete. You're right.
Yeah. Man, just think about some of those.
I've completely forgot where we are in this discussion.
We're talking Joe's. It's fine.
Cat was doing lows, and
I want to one quick high from this too is the Iron Grenadiers, Grenadiers, or
Grenadiers.
That's always been a fan. Yeah. And we learned we had a question at the end of last episode because I just listened to it today, by the way. That we were wondering if those were cyborgs or full-blown androids, because at the end of last issue they just kind of show them like booting up, and we have the answer now. They're full-blown, because you had said, are they like bats? And the answer is yes. They're like bats.
So that's cool. That is cool. I would, if they can make characters of these a little more beefier looking grenadiers here, Iron Grenadiers or Grenadiers, tomato.
Serpentor.
Yeah,
Serpentor.
Just like he likes his with some little grenadine or grenadier,
little grenadine in his drink.
Serpentor when he's sitting around pantsless. Yep.
I almost wish Orsted would show up right now to put the show back on.
I do. But Orsted likes a good drink too. You know, I can see Orsted.
Sassafras, I heard.
Yep, sassafras. A little sassafras and grenadier. That'd be great. A little cherry, nice drink.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, that's about all I have, Jarrod.
All right, I'm going to add one fun military fact, and then we'll wrap up this discussion portion of it. Unless things have changed significantly since I learned rules of warfare, if you are shot down from an aircraft and you are parachuting down, I believe the Geneva Conventions say, I think that's where this rule comes from. Anyway, the rules of warfare. If you see a dude who's been shot down and he's parachuting down, you're not supposed to shoot at him. They're basically considered non-combatants, and you're basically supposed to wait till they hit the ground and then attempt capture at that point. However, if they pull a flint and they start shooting at you, fair game on. That may have changed over, I have not been active duty for a long time, but that was the rules as I was taught it way back in the day. If someone's coming down via parachute, they are not a target unless they shoot first. If they start shooting at you, you have the right to defend yourself.
I kind of thought no one did it because it'd be really hard to hit something, I would think, while you're, descending like that.
Yeah. Most of the time, if a guy's bailed out, he's thinking about survival. He's not thinking about
shooting
staying
back
on the offensive,
Yeah.
He's thinking, I got to land and escape and evade. That's what he's more than likely thinking.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought I'd drop in a little military fun fact and see if there was anything else that anyone had burning they wanted to talk about this issue. All right. It seems like we've got everything out. I know Jasn Lady did. I was just wondering. I was checking on Pat.
Holding it all week. Come on.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff, man. Yeah, just fun to talk about.
Only one more thing as I think about it.
I knew it.
See, yep. I just want to say how cool I like Joe Colton. He is just
Joe
cool
Colton
leader.
Is really cool to get the call back to the old 12-inch Joe, of course, and then he's doing a real good job of
I really like his leadership skills
from the ops center.
Yeah, who was the general in the original series? I think he was killed by Major Blood. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
There was always that kind of hard case general that was
Austin?
I think it was General Austin.
General Austin is what comes to mind. I've been wrong.
Yeah. And then Hawk got promoted to his job.
Hawk got promoted. Yep. Mm-hmm. So if we're wrong, everybody that
you guys know who you are is going to straighten us out. We have our usuals and we love them. We adore you guys.
The research team.
Our R&D team is unsurpassed. R&D's nuts, Pat. Speaking of which, Pat, it's time to hand it back to you to determine the IG's report on the combat readiness of this issue. And I finally have a guest on the show that probably actually gets what that means.
All right. Well, for those of you who don't speak military, like me, that means we're going to score this issue's story on the same 1 to 10 flag point scale we used earlier. And speaking about that scale, what will this be, a 1 to 10 for you, Jason?
This does remind me of sometimes at work, I will say after action review and people give me these blank looks and I'm like, oh, sorry. That's something I heard my dad say a lot growing up. So that reminded me of that. I give it a 7. I guess I went into expecting a little more meat, and it might just been my expectations being a fan of the old series. And this is something a little different. It's in a different era. It's a different time. Yeah. And I fully acknowledge that. But it was a fun adventure story. Like I said, I go into these stories expecting like great military combat, adventure, and it was very intense. And, I thought it was very entertaining. I didn't think it was like spectacular. I also didn't think it was, bad or even mediocre. I thought it was pretty good. So I give it a 7.
So had you read any of the previous Devil Do issues at all?
A little bit. Whatever trades my library has, I pull those and I read it. It's super sporadic though, Pat. And I couldn't even tell you what order they're all in. And yeah, it's spread out time-wise too. I've read a few in the 2000s, a few in the 2010s, so I don't have a good through line. I need to go back and just read them all in order.
But that's good to get your take.
A good podcast that you could read along with if you decided you wanted to do that.
What podcast would that be? Gee. Cool.
Jarrod, what is your flag point rating on this?
Not too far off from Jasn Lady, actually. I think I'm at about an 8. I believe if Jason Albrick was here, my brother would probably give it a 9 because my brother's a big fan of the big action piece issues.
Yeah.
And I like them too. But I also like a lot of machinations and that kind of thing going on. And we had a little bit of that because we still have those dangling questions. Like they finally figured out where Wingfield is, but they don't know who he is.
Mm-hmm. So that's true. They don't know who he is yet.
Yeah, they don't, and they don't know that Destro's backing him, or did they figure that part out?
I think
they did maybe figure out Destro out.
I think the robots were the tip off.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
because they look like Iron Grenadiers.
Yeah, he didn't hide it very.
Yeah,
it's like Destro.
So you know he's involved, and we still have the dangling plot threads of the Joes have the Baroness. He thinks she's dead. She was with child when she quote unquote died. So what's going on with that? Like, there's a lot of those questions. They didn't harp on that in this issue, though.
No.
So I think if I got a little more development on those storylines, I'd be more 9-10. I'm eyeballing that 9 because it was kind of cool to go, what the hell is Duke? What is he doing?
Yeah.
So
the intrigue.
I'll say when I say it's an 8, it's a solid 8. Like I'm liking this. If it had a little bit more layers, this was a very filled with action issue. So it read really fast. And nothing wrong with some good action, though. Nothing wrong with some good action. So I'm at an 8. What about you, Pat?
I will bump it to a 9. Like you, I am really at a high 8. But I think just talking about it and my excitement to read the next issue has me bumping it up to that 9. I want to know what's going on with Duke. Are they going to know that this is Wingfield? And like, how are they going to interact like when they see him or know, oh, that's Wingfield? Like, holy cow.
Wingfield?
Yeah.
From 82?
Dude,
still alive?
Do they remember him?
Yeah, so I'm kind of excited on this, and the action was a lot of fun.
He's gonna be like, I was your greatest nemesis for one issue. They're gonna be like, I don't know.
When we fought you, man, it was a Tuesday for us.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta go Street Fighter.
The pit's been blown up a few times. We lost some data, so
Sure. You're a real bad guy.
We're so scared of you.
Yeah. Ooh, good job.
You got us, man. You got us.
We've been living in fear of you this entire time.
Well, when you think about that, though, he took out 2 cities.
Yeah, he definitely did go from, hey, I'm kind of a kook raising his own militia to a guy who did some mass
damage in some
that
different
took me aback. I was like, holy cow, in this world, Chicago got blown away.
Blown up. And then I don't think they ever named the city in California, but you get the feeling it's probably like LA or San Francisco.
No, I think it was like was it the Silicon Valley area or something?
I'm prepared to believe you.
Somewhere in that area that he took out.
G.I. Gary, Jim the Judge, guys, let us know. R&D team, let us know.
Now that we got the score out of the way, let's go ahead and award this episode's Silver Star Medal or Silver Snake for either gallantry in action or sneaky snaky-tude. This is where we each get to award the character in this issue who went above and beyond or below and sneaky. Jason, do you have a silver star or a silver snake to give away?
I have a silver star, and that goes to Firewall. They couldn't have won without her. She's really the one who saved the day. She saved millions of lives. She was brought out of retirement, might be a little rusty, thrown into this situation, and, she stepped up and she saved the day. It was a team effort. She couldn't have done what she did without the others holding off the enemy. But at the same time, it's like without her specialized set of skills, they couldn't have done it. They couldn't have done what they did. So I award the Silver Star to Firewall. Brand new character to me, but very impressive.
Oh, that's very cool to hear. Good pick as well. Jarrod, do you have a silver star or a silver snake?
I have a silver star as well. Full disclosure, I was going to pick Firewall, so I'm going to go to my backup pick. And I'm going to give it to Storm Shadow. There's been a lot of questions since he's moved over to the good guy's side about his allegiances, and boy, he acquitted himself well on the battlefield, and it's just so much fun to watch him kick. It's ninja fighting a robot. And it's like watching him kick that butt. It's like, that's what I'm here to see. So he didn't have a big part, but it was fun to watch. I actually wholeheartedly agree with Jasn Lady's Firewall is the linchpin of this operation. But like he said, she couldn't have got it done without some help, and he was the most fun help to watch.
Yes. Yeah. Watching people do stuff on keyboards is not fun to watch. That's why they had to have all this other stuff happening, around her.
Meanwhile, a ninja fought a robot. Okay. Let's pan to that.
then you got Stalker, who's just leaning over her shoulder. You done yet? You done yet?
I know.
You're going to make me type in my password wrong. Stop it.
Yeah. Not helping, Stalker. Not helping. He just wanted to shoot something.
404 error. What does that even mean?
Yeah, what's that?
Out of here.
Changing my password. I hate Stalker. Stalker.
Anyway, Pat, who you gonna give an award to?
Well, you took Firewall, and Storm Shadow was really, really cool too. I'm going to go the other way with a Silver Snake, and mine is going to go to Destro.
Yes.
He knows what he's doing, manipulating Wingfield, and also he's getting money from Wingfield to, try out these robots. And oh, by the way, we're going to make this a promotional film out of this. So I'm just going to make even more money from somebody else too. So he's getting it all here right now, and nobody's coming after him.
Yeah, he wins.
Yeah, he was winning no matter what.
Yeah.
I gave him the Silver Snake on the last episode for the same reason. Because he's Destro untethered to Cobra, which makes him more successful.
Exactly.
Not getting drug into their mess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's him doing his thing with his son, and they're doing a darn good job right now.
Yeah, definitely are.
Question though about Destro, something that didn't ring true when I was reading it, and that was when he worked with someone who is killing all these innocent people, he always had this kind of sense of honor about him, and I kind of wondered about that. Like, is this do I just misinterpret that about him, or is that a change in his character that's taking place?
He's kind of on the same slope as Flint right now because he thinks that the Baroness was killed. So he's kind of in I don't care about anybody mode.
Doesn't care. Yeah.
Gotcha. That is a good point. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. He always did have a kind of a little bit a big step up in honor from Cobra Commander.
Yeah.
And you're right. This is something he may not have done had she still been by his side and they had the baby and everything. He may not have been this person. That's a good observation, Jason.
Yeah, that is definitely a good observation. With that, let's go ahead and go into the next segment for Death Probe's Toy Chest.
It's here, the G.I. Joe collection, each sold separately. G.I. Joe from Hasbro.
Heck yes, Death Probe's Toy Chest. In this segment, I will take something or someone featured in this issue and give you a brief toy history on it. And for this issue, Pat.
Yeah. Ooh, yes.
I have selected the Iron Grenadiers.
Ooh, yes.
Tired of the fanatical ravings of Cobra Commander and Serpentor, Destro goes it alone.
Destro's back on the attack, out to conquer the world on his own.
Leading Destro's army is the anti-gravity pod, the HEP.
Who needs Cobra? With my demon and the Iron Grenadiers, neither Joe nor Cobra are a match for me.
Yo, Joe! Nobody beats G.I. Joe, the real American hero.
Can Destro's army destroy Joe and Cobra? Find out at Marvel Comics.
All right, you guys are going to like this. The Iron Grenadiers are, of course, Destro's elite troopers. Now, the ones in this book were pure robots. The ones I'm talking about is when they first came on the scene and they were actually people. You're going to love this because on the file card, it literally says their specialties are terrorism, sales, and marketing.
All the same.
People like that. Yeah.
It seems like it's all the same, right? Just different words for it.
Yeah, perhaps. It literally says on the file card, they are paid on commission by what they sell. Yeah. Okay. So
it's like they would be good people to sell you a timeshare.
And then murder you in the timeshare.
if you don't
right. If you don't buy it,
so they can sell it again.
Sell it again, yeah. They'll recycle it too, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just got a kick out of it. Whoever wrote that file card, by the way, if you've got the spare time, go to yojo.com or 3D Joe's or wherever and just look up the file card for the original Iron Grenadiers. It is a hoot. They had a fun time writing it. Anyways, let's talk about the figure. He wears a black outfit with red highlights and gold trim. Your highlights are basically the COVID-19 era face mask and some knee pads. If you remember the gold plated Destro, it's very in line with that. It's very of that faction. The Iron Grenadiers came with a gold sword, a black submachine gun, and a translucent red laser pistol. They were first released in 1987 as part of Series 7 and discontinued in 1990. Of course, I'm talking about the original version. As of the time of this recording, which is in April of 2024, there are currently about 11 versions in the 3 3/4 inch scale. And Pat, I think the one you would want is, I want to say the one that comes in around 2003 or 4 is the bulkier blue one. Looks more like the one we have in here.
Oh, nice.
But I don't think they said they were quote unquote robots. But anyway, I may be wrong, but I know the people who will call in to tell us.
Yeah. Okay. Call in and tell us what's wrong. And, you know, if you want to too, let us know and you can send me one of those to check out. I would definitely appreciate one
Pat
of those.
is angling for an Iron Grenadier action figure. Yes. Contact me at Yard Sale Artist for his personal address. Did anybody here have the toy? And I'm talking about the original 87, or if you had some other version of the Iron Grenadier. We'll start with Jasn, the Ladybug.
Yes. Despite me saying earlier I had no G.I. Joe toys when I was a younger kid, once I got into middle school and I had started to have some of my own money, I did start buying some G.I. Joe figures. And this was the era of all the different Vipers. They had the Frag Viper, the Night Viper, you know, the Heat Viper. I was picking up all those kind of army builder guys because they just looked cool. I mean, let's face it, they all looked really cool. And this was no exception. I picked up the Iron Grenadier and I did have it. I thought he looked really sharp. I just think he was just he almost has like a dress uniform kind of thing going on. He has some cool accessories, some cool weapons, cool helmet. So yeah, I did have him and I thought he was neat.
He just reminded me of the Night Viper, which I thought was awesome too, by the way.
The flip up visor.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I think he had a little night scope you could put on it.
Yeah. They kind of extended it out.
Yes.
Yep.
Anyway, we're not talking about Night Viper, but he was awesome.
Another time.
Pat, go ahead and tell everybody
Night Viper.
You know how to do it.
You can see everything.
This is a free podcast. Pat, do you want to tell people your sad story about not having Iron Grenadiers, or did you?
Yeah, Jarrod, let me take you back all the way back to 1987 when the Iron Grenadier came out. Saw it on the shelves, loved it. All the kids around me got it. I asked for it for Christmas, never got it. So and that's all I said to my parents. I just want this Iron Grenadier, and he's really cool. I like the sword. Just that gold sword really just, makes that outfit shine and just makes him stand out a little bit. And man, it is one that has passed me by, and I never got it. And to this day, there's a hole in my heart.
And it's
could only, and it's to this day that, whenever I drink, something that has a grenadine in it, I always just a tear falls down my eye.
Oh, somebody mail Pat an Iron Grenadier for the love of God.
And don't put the action figure in your drink. It will be a bad thing.
It will not sweeten.
It will not sweeten it up.
It will not sweeten it up. Yeah. It still tastes the same.
Yeah. But if you do and you don't like it, just go ahead and send it my way. Then I'll finish it off for you. Anyway, I'm talking about the toy.
Pat, just move on to the next segment.
All right, Jarrod, we'll move on. Up next is our feedback segment called Combat Comms.
Call it G.I. Joe! Go get Breaker! He can do it!
As always, we will start off Combat Comms with a roster of our battle-hardened Crusader Club veterans. These are the fine folks that have joined our Crusaders Club. They enjoy early access to special LONGBOX video episodes, free raffle giveaways, voting on show programming, and so much more. So these other folks reaping the benefits and giving some much appreciated support to the show.
Alan W. Wright.
Angelica Wolf.
Oh.
Auburn Elvis.
Bill Beer. Bill Dunleavy.
Braxton Underwood.
Clark Westfield.
Clinton Robinson.
Captain Entropy.
Dave Collins.
Battle Wagon.
Ezra Gallo.
Gary V. From Research and Development.
Gene Hendricks.
Gerald O.D. Green.
Heinz K.
Jason Keene.
Jason Lady.
Doesn't sound like a real person. I don't buy it.
Jeff Polier.
Jeremy L.
Jim Jarman. I hope you like Jim Jarman too.
Jim Meal. Also from Research and Development and The Outpost.
Joe Thomas,
John Watson,
Josh Strickland,
Candace Ward,
Captivating Kathy Bright, the MVP,
Matt and Lizzie Passo,
Research and Development,
Mark Ross,
Maxwell Traver,
Miranda W.,
P.D. Devons,
Paul Hicks,
Rick from Jeff and Rick Present,
Rob Morgan,
Samantha Maney,
Sean Urbanski,
Spidey 67,
Spreadsheet,
Steve Cronin,
Tim Price,
Tony Pennington,
and Toronto Cop. If we missed anyone on our list, we do apologize. Please keep in mind that we record these episodes very, very well in advance of release. So if you are a recent addition, we should be adding you soon. But still, don't worry about it. Just let us know that we missed you by sending us an email to contact@longboxcrusade.com, and we will get it straightened out. So you might be asking yourself, how do I become a Crusaders Club member? You know, it's easy and it's simple. Just head on over to patreon.com and search for Longbox Crusade for as little as $1 a month. Just $1 a month. You'll get all the access to the amazing world of the Crusaders Club. Come and check it out. Now let's see what messages from our platoon of loyal listeners we have waiting for us on Breakers ComSat.
Communications officer. Codename Breaker.
These are from episodes 48 and 49 of America's Elite, where we covered America's Elite number 2 and Special Mission number 2 with our guest, Jason, the Weasel Skull Albrecht.
Our first comment is from our good friend, Jim, the Joe Junkie. And he said, great episode, guys. To answer your question, see, he's part of that. Yeah. About the seats in the HasLab Sky Striker, because we were wondering if it had 1 or 2 seats and what the parachute situation was. It had 2 seats and 2 parachutes that were made out of cloth and not plastic.
Ooh.
Thank you, Jim, for that update.
Scotty Cameron says, I definitely agree that Shipwreck's new look is definitely an improvement from the original look. I'm a little biased because this era and series is my introduction to Shipwreck, and it's how I see the character. If they make a classified figure of this Shipwreck, I'd definitely buy it.
I think so too. It's cool looked for him. I like the old look too. You know, I love me some Shipwreck, but I like the updated as well too.
Yeah, he's kind of gotten away from the complete sailor outfit he used to wear. He used to have the hat and everything.
Yeah, he's still a cool looking guy.
Where's the pet parrot? I was wondering about that.
Oh, Paulie.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'll take one from Brian Lazara. Hopefully I said that right. This is an amazing run. Probably one of my favorite besides Chuck Dixon's run. They both happen to be the source for most of my ideas for my Joe stories. Cool.
Nice. Yeah, that Dixon run was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Dixon's good on military books. He's got a real good skill for that.
Liked his Robin and his, I think it was Birds of Prey.
Oh, God. He ran the whole Bat universe in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was so good.
Yeah. Solid, he was just adventure stories.
Just stepping up to the plate, just home run.
Yeah. That Robin miniseries that introduced Tim Drake as Robin.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Loved it.
Awesome. Wholeheartedly agree. I've got another one from Jim Meal here. And Jim says the Longbox Crusade Network is delivering 2 different G.I. Joe podcasts in 1 week. And that is all because of Jim. He, I believe, the same week we released one of our shows, Pat, and it was Jim's Outpost shows. So this is a big plug for Jim's show on the network. Outpost is Jim's show where he basically covers everything else. You know, he does talk a bit about comics, but he's also talking toys and cartoons, and he's doing a much broader scope thing, and it's a lot of fun, and we love having him on the network.
Yeah, definitely enjoying what Jim is producing and like talking to him about Joe. I'll take the last one from Matt Passo, and he says, just starting the episode, but huge props for Jason for showing some love to Cobra La.
I'm questioning Jason's judgment there, but you know, with the Cobra Law love,
it's all right. I still love Cobra Law. It's very divisive, but I know Matt Passo loves it, and I dig it too. I always thought the figures were cool, but it is
figures are cool.
It's a split point from a lot of Joe fans, and I get that.
And you know, I haven't read the newer series, but seen some covers and some stuff. So looks like they're getting involved a little bit. So
they bring them back, huh? Wow.
I'm hearing that or seeing that. So anybody, again, research and development, for those of you, let us know. I definitely want to start reading the series more. I read one of the issues, so fun. Thank you all again for those awesome comments. We love hearing from you, and we also love hearing your voice. So if you want to send us a voicemail, you can do that by calling 707-532-5269. Again, that number is 707-532-LBOX.
Pick up the satellite communicator.
Tap into my firewall.
Oh, easy. Okay, folks, as promised, here is the interview that Pat and I did with Mr. Joe Casey. Thank you so much, Mr. Casey, for your time on this, and we will give this a listen, and hopefully he won't be mad at Jasn Lady, who gave the story a 7. All right, friends and fans out there, we are here with a very special guest to join us. Ever since we got to the America's Elite, everybody knows that has been written by, because we've been giving a lot of praise to, Mr. Joe Casey, and I want to welcome him to Fort Longbox here on G.I. Joe Chronicles. Welcome to the show, Mr. Casey.
Thank you, sir. How are you guys?
I'm good. How are you, Pat?
I'm doing good. Glad to be able to talk with Joe here. And as we just get into starting up his run on the America's Elite.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do real quick, sir, is we are going to give you a couple of rapid fire questions so that our listeners can know what kind of a Joe fan you are. And then we'll talk more specifically about your run on America's Elite and all that stuff. So your rapid fire questions are coming. Are you prepared?
No, let's do this.
All right. That's what we like to hear. All right. First question, pretty obvious. Who's your favorite Joe?
I mean, everybody says Snake Eyes. Is it has to be a Joe character, or could it be just of the universe?
Your follow-up question is going to be, what is your favorite Cobra?
Okay. Well, then my favorite Joe, I would say Stalker.
I like that.
Nice choice.
I like that. We are big Stalker fans on this show. He likes I like Stalker too, very much. So rolling that in, what about your favorite Cobra?
Destro, definitely.
He's solid answers here. Pat, I'm going to let you take the next Joe question. What do you got for him?
What got you into G.I. Joe?
Probably the cartoon from the 80s, because I would see the commercials for the comic book, and it was the first cartoon that I remember seeing that looked like a comic book. So I remember very distinctly coming home from school every day and watching the first 5-parter. They would show an episode every afternoon. It was the Mass Device 5-parter. I remember that very well. That was kind of my intro. And my friend, one of my friends I grew up with, was into the action figures and everything. And so I sort of vicariously experienced that side of it through him. But yeah, for me, it was definitely that first 5-part cartoon because it just looked good.
Yeah. Do you know what your first Marvel comic was for G.I. Joe?
It was within the first year. I don't recall because, as I'm sure you guys know, issue number 1 and the first couple issues were very hot comics in the market, and I never even saw them in the wild. So I think I bought, I want to say, issue 8 or 9 off the newsstand, and that was my introduction. I never really read the Marvel comic religiously. I would get certain issues here and there, depending on covers and things like that. I mean, things that would just leap out from the stands. Like there's one cover, I don't remember, you guys probably know the issue number, where it's a big close-up of Cobra Commander's faceplate with the Joe team kind of reflected in the faceplate. Yeah. So I would see something like that. I would pick that up because it looked great. So it was random issues like that. I was a lot more into, the superhero side of comic books. And even though G.I. Joe kind of walked to that line in terms of the approach to the material, I think I was just too deep into superheroes to sort of go all in on the G.I. Joe month to month.
What were you collecting back then?
Well, I was a Marvel kid, so it was a lot of the classic Marvel stuff, Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man. That was kind of my first jam. And, when G.I. Joe really hit, also, I should clarify, too, that I was starting to see the independent stuff coming out from like Pacific Comics and First Comics, like American Flag, Captain Victory, Nexus. So I was already starting to even move away from superheroes. But like I said, something like the cartoon, which had that really slick mainstream comic book look to it, that did catch me because I just thought, wow, the cartoons are finally catching up to the way the comic books in general looked. So I was excited about that.
Tell you what I figured out, Pat, is he's of a relatively similar age to us. Which means you were probably relatively young when you started working. America's Elite was your first Joe work. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
And you must have been relatively young, in your 20s, I imagine?
Oh, no, I was just into my 30s.
Early 30s? Okay, that makes sense. I was probably in my mid-20s when it came out. Interesting. So we'd love to hear that story. Like, how did you link up with, I assume, Josh Blaylock? And like, how did that happen? How did you end up on that America's Elite run? That is fantastic, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. Josh recruited me. He was doing a sort of mini superhero line, I think called Aftermath line of books or something. No, maybe I'm getting that wrong. But it was a group of 4 books, and I did one. It was called Infantry. And it didn't last very long, but I got to know Josh. And after a few months of turning in scripts on that, he came back to me and asked me if I was interested in doing a relaunch of the series, because I think he was going to wrap up the previous series. And he just asked if I was interested. And I'd never really considered writing this property before. But he came back to me and he said, you could have not necessarily carte blanche, and I wouldn't even consider that anyway, because I'm a believer in continuity and keeping things that worked and keeping those threads going. But he did say he wanted a fresh start, so it gave me a chance to kind of come in fresh. And he sent me all the Devil's Due run. And I read through that, and I basically sent him a take about what I would do, and he went for it surprisingly, and we were off to the races. But I think he was looking for a moment to make the title a little more accessible at that moment. And I think his thinking was if he brought in somebody new that maybe wasn't a super fan, but could look at the IP with sort of fresh eyes, that would translate into sort of a new jumping on point for readers. And maybe I could bring some of my Marvel readers over and the DC readers that I might have had at the time. And that bore out to some degree because the approach I took was very in keeping with the work I've been doing at those publishers anyway.
It definitely shows. You had a fresh take, but with a complete, you obviously did read those issues because you had a complete respect for what came before. You had a feel that you knew what you were doing, but it was very new at the same time. It was a perfect blend. So they couldn't have got a better guy, I don't think.
Well, it was a pretty deep dive to read, 40 plus issues, in a couple of days.
You don't have to tell us. We podcasted about all of
them. Right. So, I by the time I got to the end of the run and it sort of formulated what I was wanting to do with it, I felt pretty confident that I could, not lose any readers by going too far afield from what they'd been reading for the last, the previous couple of years. And, like I said, I grew up sort of immersed in DC, Marvel, superhero continuity. I mean, that's in my DNA to look at a universe and keep what clicks with me and what vibes with me, and hopefully we'll keep what vibes with the audience and the readers, but inject something new to it, something that's additive as opposed to subtractive. That was the whole idea, really.
I'd say it worked. Absolutely. So the big question we've got to ask about this relaunch that you did after 43 Devil's Due, you pick up number 1, America's Elite. It's fantastic. We're loving it. The biggest thing that Pat and I keep smiling ear to ear about is bringing back Vance Wingfield as the big bad.
Yeah.
A dude we hadn't seen since, I think, issue 4 of the Real American Hero run. How did that go about?
I wanted to tie it in to Larry's series as well in some way, because I knew that even though I hadn't read a lot of it, I knew its reputation. I knew how respected Larry was in terms of how the fans really, he was their G.I. Joe guy. So I wanted that connection. I think originally I had somebody else in mind that, for whatever reason, Josh said was probably not usable or probably not the best choice. So then I really went back and looked at the first couple of years of Larry's series, and finding this guy, it just sort of worked. I had the plot already in place. I just needed the guy, the mastermind behind it. So luckily that character just fit perfectly. So I was thrilled to have that tie to Larry's series.
It works so well. And I think it's fascinating that you've already told us your favorite character is Destro. And what did we talk about on that last recording, Pat? What were we loving so much about this arc?
Oh, man, just how Destro is just taking command of everything. And you have him just being this guy who knows what he's doing and playing both sides of the Joes and, I want to say Cobra, but with Wingfield, playing Wingfield and just using him as a pawn in his own little game he's playing.
I'm a big Destro head, so I wanted him to be, Cobra Commander always, especially in the cartoons. I mean, that's the nature of cartoons. He was kind of the buffoon to Destro's sort of cool guy persona. Even the voice characterization of it was, you could tell one was sort of there to be mocked and ridiculed, and one was there to be sort of feared and, respected. So that's just the way I just saw that character. I just wanted him to be above it all, but, fingers in everything and sort of the omnipresent, the mastermind type, and to such a degree that even his allies in Cobra weren't quite maybe aware of how he was manipulating things. That's always interesting to me. It's sort of beyond the mustache twirling supervillain. It's really a Machiavellian type, which, a series like this definitely needs. And Destro just fits that bill so perfectly.
You definitely had a handle on him. Pat, do you have anything more about the arc? I kind of want to switch gears and talk about the process of it, but I want to make sure you have any follow-up.
Well, my other thing is the character development that is being done. You definitely did the work to find out, what was going on in Devil's Due Run. You had to take over writing Flint and kind of what happened to Lady J, having that kind of more deeper character involvement that's going on with Flint. Was that something you wanted to do or dive into a little bit more?
Well, when he told me what the status quo of the characters were, and he told me that, where Flint was at, I was like, okay, this is great. You're starting off with a character dealing with tragedy. Mm-hmm. That's always dramatic. He's changed by it. He's altered by it. That's just good drama. Mm-hmm. So I was, not to sound sadistic, but I was thrilled. I was thrilled to get him in that state and to hear what happened to Lady J. So it really worked, because what I wanted to do overall was to try to deepen these characters, deepen the characterization, get into the emotional lives of these guys, as much as would fit in the genre that we were working in. Because that was another thing that I felt I could try to bring to it. Because, and it inevitably happens with almost every G.I. Joe series I've found. And it happened with the Devil's Due previous to me. That series is that however focused you start out with, there are so many characters that you eventually start to bring them in, and you start to, and the scope of the series always grows and always tends to become somewhat unwieldy in terms of being able to focus on characterization. There becomes so many moving pieces and such a sprawling cast, because you want to give, readers who are fans of every character their moment. Mm-hmm. But that is often at the sacrifice of deeper characterization and deeper character interaction and more focused character interaction. So that's why I pared down the cast so much. I pared it down to what, in my mind, was more of like a superhero team dynamic. Smaller cast, really dig into the relationships and the interactions and the connections between the characters, so that readers could really feel like they know them, as opposed to just watching them, being moved around like pieces on a chessboard. That was, aside from delivering on the action and the adventure of it all, that was my main goal with the series in general, is to really try to crack open these characters to see how they tick, and not to reinvent them, but make people who longtime readers feel like they knew these guys intimately. Because when there's 100 characters on stage, mm-hmm. it's hard to focus on even a few of them. But when you have a smaller cast, you can do that. And looking back, that was really, I really got to them. A character like Flint, again, who'd been through such a ordeal, he was just ready-made to kind of crack open and peel the onion there.
Did you get the opportunity to choose the elite group that we start off with during this beginning of the series?
I would say that the choice for the cast was kind of 50-50 between me and Josh. I mean, when you look at the characters and you look at which ones connect and which ones have the most history, it almost becomes obvious who the core cast should be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Stalker, Duke, Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Roadblock, you know, everybody I picked basically. And then there was always a couple of interesting sort of left field characters. I mean, Flint was a left field character to me at first. But when the whole Lady J thing was told to me, you know, I thought, oh, well, we've got to have him then because he's got an interesting story to tell. So I might not have picked him otherwise, to be perfectly honest, because I don't think he was in my first draft picks.
Well, I've definitely been impressed at how well you knew these characters. I guess, like I said, diving into 43 issues, and you had some history there as well. Pat and I noticed in a recent issue, there's sort of a Storm Shadow's on the good guy team now. But can he be trusted? And Shipwreck is butting heads with Storm Shadow. And I thought it was a stroke of genius, whether you did this on purpose or not. But you had Stalker defend Storm Shadow to Shipwreck. And I thought of all the guys in the room that's going to defend Tommy to Shipwreck, it would be Stalker, who served with him before the Joe team ever started. They know each other from the past. And so whether that was conscious or not, you're doing great work with it.
Well, I appreciate that. No, you see those connections when you do your research and you're like, okay, when those moments come up and you get a chance to have a character moment that, you know, sort of touches on their past histories, but is in the moment and current to the situation, that's gold to me. Absolutely. As a writer.
Perhaps, and you found it. Pat and I were both so impressed. We're like, what a nugget of detail. He just absolutely nails there. That was very, very impressive. Shifting gears to the more business side, the more creating comics side of things. Another big plus we found for America's Elite is a fresh penciler, Stefano Caselli. How do you end up with him, and what is it like working with him? I know this is mid-2000s, so is this a guy you've ever met face-to-face? Is it done digitally? Just kind of tell us the story of you and Stefano Caselli.
Well, I think Stefano had been working, if memory serves, and it sometimes does, that he was working on another one of those little sub-imprint of superhero comics.
Right.
So he was, I suppose, a Josh discovery, because I'd never heard of him before. I'd never seen his work before. To this day, I've never met him. I mean, we just communicate over email, but so Josh kind of put us together sort of out of the ashes of that short-lived imprint. He took me from one book and Stefano from another book and put us together on G.I. Joe. And I was really impressed with his work and I thought he did a great job. I mean, as he's gone on to be a preeminent superhero artist for Marvel, it's obvious that that's where his roots were as well. So when I kind of told him, I'm going to treat this as almost like superhero comic book in terms of approach and execution, he got it right away. I mean, he knew, and the way he drew things and his iconography, his covers, I mean, he tapped into that sort of superhero vibe, that more sort of in-your-face action comic vibe in a really great way, and really set the series apart as far as I'm concerned.
When working with him, did you have some input on the page layouts or some of the story kind of beats that he puts in his artwork?
Well, I'm writing these full scripts, so he's getting full panel descriptions and, you know, dialogue, everything at once. Again, if I remember right, I mean, I would, you know, when I write scripts, I will dictate things like, you know, big panel, you know, 2/3 of the page, when it's a big moment or whatever, or if I call out a 9-panel grid or a 6-panel grid or whatever the layout may be, if I have an idea, I'll call it out. And he followed my scripts pretty closely. So after the 0 issue and after the first issue, I could see that we were on the same wavelength. So it wasn't like I had to see layouts, which I do with a lot of artists that I work with. I'll look at their thumbnails and make sure that we're on the same page. Stefano was from the get-go. He pretty much got what I was doing from the script. So there was no need to kind of look over his shoulder or anything. He did a great job from the get-go.
Yeah, definitely. I think the two of you together, then just hearing that is something we've talked about going through these 3 issues, is the page layouts. how that is also kind of, telling the story sometimes without the words, just the action and the panels and how it moves the pace of the story along. It's just well done.
Thank you. That early aughts period in comics in general was a very, that was coming out of the cinematic widescreen approach to comics that happened sort of in the late 90s first. And then things like The Authority and The Ultimates, basically Brian Hitch, he brought that school to the forefront, and a lot of us just followed along. It's such an interesting way to tell a story when you've got the artist that can pull it off. And that was the other thing about Stefano, is that seeing his other work and seeing that he was leaning that direction anyway, it was natural to sort of go in that cinematic direction with the storytelling, where I think that was another break from the previous series for me, is I knew that I could bring that storytelling approach to this particular series and that it would be different and give it its own flavor.
Well, it definitely has its own flavor. It's wonderful, and we are digging it. We've had on our show three times now, Josh has come by and supported the show, and we love Josh. And he's told us on more than one occasion that the biggest challenge he had with G.I. Joe comics was, it's hard enough to do a comic every 30 days, but to do a comic every 30 days and go through Hasbro was quite the challenge. Is that something you experienced as well? Or did Josh kind of fight those battles behind closed doors for you? Like, what was your relationship with the Hasbro process in this?
I don't recall any interaction with Hasbro on my part. I think Josh was the firewall on that, and he did a great job. I don't remember anything coming back that I had pitched or suggested that was knocked back by Hasbro. There's in the second story arc, there's a major development with one of the characters that we cleared beforehand. And I guess because I had the whole story in mind, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to talk spoilers for the whole run, if you're still in the early stages of it, but
you can do however you want it, man. We're just happy you're here.
Okay. Yeah. The whole Snake Eyes storyline from in the second arc, obviously that was something I pitched early on. I mean, I knew I wanted to have that story or try to have that story. I don't remember necessarily having a nail-biting moment of thinking, is Hasbro going to go for this or not? Because it's, to the best of my recollection, it pretty much sailed through, mainly because I had the ending already. So they knew where it was going. I wasn't just suggesting, hey, I'm gonna kill somebody and then just leave it at that. I mean, they knew how it was going to end up and how it was going to resolve itself. So I think that helped in not dealing with any sort of corporate roadblocks that they might have thrown up.
Okay, that sounds like you had just a really good roadmap, so that made sailing smoother. And then, of course, you had Josh there. Every time he's on, he's like, "Oh, I did Hasbro."
I'm sure. I mean, if that was the case, he never really expressed it to me, which I definitely appreciate.
I should reiterate, he's a professional. He doesn't talk bad about him. He just says it could be frustrating.
Oh, I know. Believe me, I know the frustrations of corporate IPs. Trust me.
I bet you do. So kind of looking back on your runs on G.I. Joe, which as Pat and I are rediscovering, we read them when they were new back in the day, and then we haven't read them since, and now we're rediscovering them and how wonderful they are. Looking back on it, is there anything that you go, oh man, I wish I would have, fill in the blank? Is there anything that you wish you would have done, or are you pretty solidly happy on how it worked out for you?
I'm pretty happy with it, actually. I did 19 issues total. I got 3 arcs out of it that I felt did what I set out to do. I accomplished what I set out to do. And I think I jumped off at the right time, because what I had pitched was the first year. So basically 2 big stories that I felt like I wanted to do, that I felt would be good for the characters, good for the franchise. The first arc with the satellites coming down and everything, that was sort of a big sprawling action story. And then the second arc was a more personal story for the characters. So I wanted to swing to both extremes if I could. The third arc was interesting because I didn't have that idea going in with the Phoenix Guard. So one thing that you do as a writer, and it's inevitable no matter how much preparation that you have going in, as you write a series, that's when you're really getting to know the characters. I mean, you've done all your research, you've got your ideas about where you want them to go and how you want to characterize them. When you're actually putting words in their mouth and going through the stories issue by issue, you really take them on, you take them into your heart, and you you know them. After a year, I really knew these characters. So the question was, okay, so what do I do with that knowledge? What do I do to sort of upend that and challenge myself? And I did what I referred to earlier. I opened things up a little bit. I brought in more characters, and I was also, and this is not a criticism because I expected this at some level once I got through those first two stories, that I was starting to get the suggestions from editorial to bring in maybe more characters, to expand the cast a little bit. Because, you'd get letters, you'd get feedback from readers. Where's, my favorite character? Where, he's been, I haven't seen him for a year now. I haven't seen him in 12 issues. Where is he? And I was sensitive to that, and I didn't want to not acknowledge people's favorite characters. So, and I was counting on Josh to kind of be the divining rod on that as well. And he was great at that. He didn't overwhelm me with saying, hey, bring in these 10 more guys. He would just sort of every so often sort of like, maybe it's time to bring in Spirit, And I would look at that character and I say, okay, I think I have a way to bring him in that's organic to what we've been doing so far. It not seem like this sudden influx of cast, because, it happens in every large cast book. You start out with a small crew, you get to know those guys, and then more people come in and you start to not spend as much time with the people you've come to know for a year, and you feel it. It's kind of like, there's a lot of examples of that. Like one that comes to mind is, Twin Peaks. If you're a Twin Peaks fan, there was the, sort of the core cast that you got to know in the first season. And then in the second season, for some reason, they brought in all these different disparate characters from, every corner of the Twin Peaks universe that just took up space in a lot of situations and sort of took you away from, the sheriff or Dale Cooper or, whoever, because you're too busy dealing with, this other rando that just stepped in for seemingly no reason. So I was sensitive to that. But then I had this idea about the Phoenix Guard, this sort of replacement team that was made up of disguised bad guys. They were almost like the G.I. Joe version of the original Thunderbolts, if everybody remembers the Thunderbolts.
Right,
yeah.
That was the basic idea. But then, so it was a good idea, but then I'm in the story and I realized, well, now I've got basically two full teams of characters to kind of deal with and move across the stage and make this story work. So by the time I got to issue 18, I was a little burnt out from just that story, just dealing with all those puzzle pieces. And on top of that, editorial, again, not in any sort of negative way, they were saying, okay, now let's expand the cast even more. Let's get even more guys in there. And once I jumped off and other creators came in, it got really expansive. They did a whole kind of big war story where it seemed like everybody and their brother showed up. And I just remember looking at it after I left and just thinking, I couldn't have done that story. That would have been out of my comfort zone in a big way. And I give it up to, writers and artists who can handle, basically an army of characters and make it work and make it seem smooth. That was at the time, that was just out of my wheelhouse in a big bad way.
Do you find with your creative process, or just the creative process in its own sense, when you are dealing with a property, G.I. Joe or some of the Marvel stuff and DC stuff that you've done, that they call it like, you get a chance to kind of reset the field, play with the toys, and then get them back to a point to put them back in the toy box so the next person can kind of come and do what they want to do?
Yeah, I never want to break the toys, ever. I mean, they're not my toys, so it's not for me to do that. And also, when you're looking at long-running continuities, you're just a link in the big chain. And what you want to do, or for me anyway, I want to respect the chain. It's nice to make an impact. I mean, I've done runs on things where people have appreciated what I've done, but I'm more proud. I mean, with G.I. Joe, we're right now with what Kirkman is doing over at Skybound. We're clearly entering another sort of G.I. Joe renaissance in terms of the comics. So for me, I'm more proud than anything just to be a link in that chain that stretches all the way back to Larry in the 80s and is still going strong with the guys doing it at Skybound. I get a kick out of being part of that creative continuity. I love when people appreciate what I did, but I'm more pleased when people just don't think that I was a black mark on the record of the, comic books, through the years. So that's more gratifying than anything, to be honest.
Yeah, no, definitely. What you've done with this is just the character development. We keep talking about that. Just, it feels so good to have like someone roughly around our ages that knows the continuity. Basically, most of us comic book people, we're continuity nerds because
what?
We grew up with that. I'm all right though with things getting kind of changed around, and that's what happened with what Blaylock did and what you did. Even the changes that are going on in the current universe, it's just amazing to see the longevity that these characters can have, and then just the little twists and the turns that people use to make them, like you did, to make a character interesting and like, wow, I didn't really know. I would really like, Shipwreck more, or like these different characters more.
To be honest, that's what I felt I could bring to the table more than anything else, because I'm not a big military guy. I'm not, and I mean, although I caught up on the continuity, it was not in my blood that I knew these characters and what they'd been through backwards and forwards, like the back of my hand, So I felt like my strength was to dive into character as much as possible. And, it was a strength I hadn't seen in Larry's comics or in the Devil's Due series previous to mine. Those were more, not that mine wasn't action oriented, but they were more about the totality of the concept and getting everything in there. And I mean, Larry, for God's sake, was creating the stuff. So, and he was like a machine. He just kept coming out with characters and concepts, and it was amazing. And the previous Devil's Due series to me was a sort of a revisiting of the totality of the IP. So that's all. That's the one avenue that I felt hadn't been explored was those character relationships and treating. I will say this too. I don't know if I've ever said this talking about G.I. Joe. My other comp for G.I. Joe was Star Trek, mainly the original series. That was sort of my jam. That core crew of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Sulu, Uhura, Scotty, Chekhov, that in its own way has a team dynamic to it. So, and even though there's a whole crew of Enterprise staffers and crew members, the stories revolved around those 7 characters.
Yeah.
So that was my other comp going into this that I don't even know if I ever sort of expressed it to Josh, but that was definitely in the back of my head going into this, that was a good comp.
That's a smart choice, I would say, too, because you said you're not a military guy. When I'm reading your story arc, I'm at my 2nd or 3rd duty location. I'm a military guy. I'm a combat veteran. My brother's a combat veteran. My father's a combat veteran. And it seemed authentic. And I could see where tapping into Star Trek has that. It has a militaristic family unit feel that translates very well to G.I. Joe that I thought about till you said just now. So that was very good work on your part.
Well, I was trying, I mean, the military stuff, anything that sounded authentic, I was sweating it. Trust me. I mean, and so to borrow from the sort of the nautical terminology that Star Trek would often, mine, gave me a roadmap to some degree of how to deal with it in G.I. Joe. But I mean, I do remember at the time, a lot of writers probably feel this way. You're just really working hard for it to sound authentic, because if it doesn't, that ruins almost everything else. I mean, if these guys don't sound like soldiers and don't sound like they're part of a military operation, then, I know a lot of readers would have been like, this just doesn't feel right. That's a missing element. So I remember sweating that quite a bit as I would write these scripts.
Well, aside from you're able to rely on some of the vernacular of Star Trek. I remember in the early Devil's Due issues, they had a military consultant on staff. Did you have access to that, or was it just a lot of kind of hoping this would work, or did you have anybody that helped you with that? Because it came out fine. I'm here to tell you.
I appreciate that. I didn't have a military consultant at all. I didn't know I could have one. It was never offered up to me.
Josh has been hiding something from you for like 40 years.
Well, I mean, I to his credit, it might have been the smart move, because to go in a different direction or a slightly different approach to change up that sort of heavily referenced or sort of military oversight might have been a good way to change it up. So it might have been a smart move on his part.
Good point. Good point.
When you're going through your process and during this time of your career, is there anything that you went into this going, I kind of want to challenge myself to do something, to just continue your craft and get better at it or work on something, or add something in that would give you a little challenge when doing this series?
I don't know if I would use the word challenge, but I think, again, like my approach was to take what I learned from writing and reading superhero team books and seeing if I could apply that formula to G.I. Joe. That was my goal, and that was my creative bent on the whole thing, was like, would the readers respond? Do they want these characters to be deeper? Do they want a tighter cast that would allow for more character interaction? It seemed to work at the time. That was my challenge, to take something that was part of, like I said, part of my DNA and plug it into this IP and see if it worked. Because there was no guarantee. I mean, it was slightly radical at the time to go from, I don't know how many G.I. Joe characters you could say there were in the,
a lot,
70 of them. To go from that to a core of, 8, 9 characters was a big leap at the time. And none of us knew if, like I said, if anybody would accept their favorite character not being part of it for a while. If that would cause some sort of mass exodus of G.I. Joe readers or what. Turned out not to necessarily be the case. But I felt like there was some risk there. But that was kind of part of the excitement of it too, is to see if my theory was going to work.
Yeah.
I think you did a good job of picking a lot of people's favorite characters. Like you say, you kind of understood sort of the heart and soul of Joe. And I think for those of us who have slightly more offbeat favorite characters, I'm a big Beachhead fan. We know that. We know that there's not going to be a lot of Beachhead-centric stories. So I think you did a good balance.
I didn't have a bias. I mean, I had my favorites, but I didn't have I didn't have some obscure character, G.I. Joe character that I was going to put in there just to amuse myself. I was pretty even tempered about who should be in it. I mean, it was popularity versus character dynamics versus, in Flint's case, great, recent backstory that I could tap into. So I felt pretty good about not indulging myself in any way, because I didn't really have any G.I. Joe indulgences aside from Destro. Basically, that was the one character I was sort of really anxious to get my hands on.
Well, when they give me the G.I. Joe property, it's going to be 14 issues of Beachhead.
The Beachhead saga. I'm ready for it.
Speaking of which, if Skybound called you tomorrow and said, Joe, we'd love to give you another Joe story arc, is that something that would excite you? Do you have something on the back of your mind, or would you have to be like, I've done my time? Like, how would you feel about that?
Well, Kirkman's a friend of mine, and so I've been doing some other unannounced work for Skybound, not G.I. Joe related, but so I knew all this was coming years ago. So I think I might have mentioned to Kirkman, I said, because when he told me they were doing a Duke series, a Cobra Commander series, I was like, dude, if you ever do a Destro series, let me know.
Yes. Could you put a word in for me on Beachhead? Just anyway.
Sure.
So you'd be game, you think, for if it was on? I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth. Just kind of like, is this a property you'd like to return to maybe at some time? Is the question I'm asking.
I'd never really considered it before Kirkman got the license, but I mean, Destro Year One would be interesting.
Oh, nice. I
don't know if that story's ever been told before, but certainly, they're restarting things now, so it's you never know. With
Destro, since Destro is the kind of guy you like, we do have a bit or so that we do with Orsted and his brother, which is like the total opposite of Destro, or we call him Orsted.
You're telling our tales to joke about our own character, Orsted.
Orsted. I just got that just now.
Yeah. So he's like the opposite of peace loving and all that. Destro's just something to think about if
Sure.
If you need any help about Destro's brother, give us a call back. You've got our contact.
Okay.
Yeah, you found like the perfect comment, I think, to wind down the interview. Like, oh Lord, we're going to tell Joe Casey about our Orsted character. Oh, goodness, he's very Orsted's very relaxed. He believes in health foods and being nice to people. And
listen, I'm ashamed to say the first time you mentioned that name, I was like, "Who is this guy?" I was racking my Rolodex for like, okay, wait.
Who the hell is Orsted? Trust me, we made him up on the show. Yeah. Oh man, now you aired all of our laundry to
sorry about that, but
that's all right. I was going to wind this one down, Pat. So if you have any more burners, now's the time. We've had his ear for almost an hour now.
Yeah, no, just definitely appreciate all that you've done for this Joe series, and we are just starting it, but it is something that has grabbed us right at the get-go.
So good.
And we're interested in going through it all again and just deeper dives into here and your point of it now. So now I'm going to for sure going to go kind of through this going, oh yeah, I can see the Star Trek-y kind of references with that are going on here in that main group of people. So thank you, Joe, for what you did.
Well, you're welcome. And I may regret this, but if you guys are so new into it, I mean, I know, like I said, I know you've read them before, but the deep dive you're doing, once you get to the end of it, if you want to reconnect and
for sure
rake me over the coals, I'm
No, 100%. We'd be happy to reach out to you. The most fun thing about going through this is, like I said, Pat and I read them when they were new, but it's been 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's almost like we're reading them new. It just all we remember is that we liked them, and what we're really trying to do is shine a light on, especially this Devil's Due run. Now we have been talking a lot of, also about special missions from the 80s, but we also like to focus on Devil's Due because so many Joe collectors were just like, it's not Larry, so I don't want it. Right. And they've missed out on such wonderful stories.
Yeah.
Just so
well. I don't think anyone who writes G.I. Joe, aside from Larry, is ever going to match what he did. I mean, he created the thing basically. So we all live in his shadow, and he's such a great guy and a great writer. So I'm proud to live in his shadow on this IP.
That is very well said. We all love Larry. I guess it's kind of like trying to write James Bond novels after Ian Fleming. It can be tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you have, like Pat said, thanks so much for giving us your time. This is your time to air any upcoming projects. Let our audience know, hey, I got this coming out, that coming out, anything like that. Just let the audience know. We are all ears.
In terms of comic books, I'm writing for DC Comics. I'm writing the new Kneel Before Zod series that just started last month. I'm writing for Image a Dutch series from the old Team Youngblood character. That starts next month. And I just wrapped up a creator-owned series at Image called Junior Baker, the Righteous Faker, which is a sequel to a series I did about 10 years ago called Butcher Baker. So the 5th issue just came out, and the trade of that will be out early summer. So there's a couple things comic book-wise on the horizon that people can look out for.
Awesome. Oh, I can't let you go without letting you know that people have found you. People have found Joe Casey via Marvel, via DC, via G.I. Joe. I have to tell you, the weird way I discovered you was in a book that I wish would come back that you did called Hell Cop. Is that right?
Oh, my God.
That's how I learned about you. I was like, I saw it at the store, had a cool cover. I was like, let me read this. And I was like, this Joe Casey guy's all right. And they're like, yeah, he's done other stuff.
Yeah. Well, that was probably only a couple years into my career. So I hadn't done a lot of stuff when Hellcop came out. That was one of the earliest things I did, and probably maybe the first thing I did for Image Comics.
Maybe. That's your creation, right? Hellcop's yours, if I'm not mistaken.
No. Brian Haberlin created that character. And
I am mistaken. Okay, my bad. Yeah. I thought that was wholly yours, and I was going to try to talk you into starting out Hellcop again.
No, he brought me on. I mean, I fleshed it out a bit, but that's Haberlin's character. In fact, I think he brought that character back in the last couple of years, I think. He's done some recent new work on Hellcop. I haven't read it, but I know it's out there.
Dang it. I set this whole thing up, this whole interview to get him to do Hellcop again, and it backfired on me, Pat.
Somebody beat me to it.
Well, we still got the Orsted stuff. We
got his interest peaked on Orsted. So that's
sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Joe. For our listeners, for our show, we are just honored that you would take the time to talk to us. So thank you for being here.
No, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that was such a good time, wasn't it, Pat?
It was. It was a great time. I loved talking to Joe. It was so cool to get to talk to him about Joe and some other things.
Yeah, a little Joe on Joe action. And he was such a nice guy that, and he said, hit him up when we're done. And he'd love to do sort of the wrap up interview with us. So hopefully we will have him back on the network soon to give us that wrap up. So that was awesome. And thanks again, Mr. Joe.
Thank you, Joe. It was great.
And that will bring us to mission complete status for this episode of G.I. Joe Chronicles. If you'd like to hear more from us in the realm of comic books, action films, vintage TV, movies, serials, and more, check out the entire Longbox Crusade Network. DJ Kristatos, where can they find that?
Well, Jarrod, if you like classy and fancy and just all around a lot of cool guys and girls, we have a lot of cool girls as well, too, that hang around with us. You can find the Longbox Crusade on pretty much all the podcatchers out there. Just go ahead and look up Longbox Crusade and you will find us. Or you can go to www.longboxcrusade.com. We can also be found on X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to just put us on the YouTube and just play us in the background while you're doing your yard work, your homework, any kind of work that you're doing, or you just want something on in the background while you're sleeping, just put it on while you're sleeping and it'll probably play the episodes and continue to play more and more episodes, helping us build our numbers up. So we would really appreciate it to find us on the YouTube as well. And all that's out there under Longbox Crusade. Back to you, Jarrod.
All right, Pat, if you'd like to chat with us personally online, we can be found back to you, Pat.
Oh, Jarrod, you got me on that one. I can be found at Kristatos01. But where can you be found? Jarrod, back to you.
I am at Yard Sale Artist on X and Facebook, and Instagram is all at Yard Sale Artist. You can check out my artwares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. And the moment you've all been waiting for, Mr. Jasn Lady, where can folks find you and perhaps those cool books you write?
Sure. Like it says on the screen there, I am the author of the Magic Pen Adventures. They are a series of 3 books for middle school kids, probably 4th through 7th grade, about kids that get a hold of a magic pen. Everything they draw becomes real when they draw with it. Monster problems, super problems, and time problems are the titles, and they're available on Amazon.com and everywhere else online. You can buy books, and I may or may not have a 4th one coming out next year. We'll have to see. Some news might be coming out soon.
Ooh.
Stay tuned.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Like, I hate to break it to you, but I have to do like a lawsuit against Jasn Lady because, like, I wrote a series of books about a pencil that I would draw things and they would come to life. And, being a chill guy that I am, I was like, Orsted, don't sue this guy. But I'm like, he stole my idea, And then I talked to my brother Destro about it. And he was like, Orsted, you've never written a book in your life. And then I remembered I hadn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I rolled something that looked like a pen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. It's got to be that sassafras and that grenadine that Pat gave me.
Do you think if I got a hold of Jasn Lady's magic pen and I drew some herbs,
magic mushrooms,
I could have, they would be real?
Yeah.
All right, Orsted, thanks for stopping by. And thanks for joining us for this episode of G.I. Joe Chronicles. We will see you on the battlefield next episode, where we will cover G.I. Joe Special Missions from Marvel number 4, No Holds Barred. Until then, Platoon, fall out.
Yo, Joe.
The music themes for this show are done by musical genius Joe November. Please check out his SoundCloud at Josephline99. That's Josephline 99. You will not regret it.
Get it going. Oops. Well, Jarrod, I'm glad you asked. Here we go. Now it's time to part of the show where we debrief all new recruits. Hopefully, I'll slow it down now.
No, that you went too soon on that. You got a little lower on the script.
Oh, I guess so. Never mind.
I got so excited.
I know. I got so excited. I was like, "Oh, I'll show you."
Yeah.